active in code enforcement, code development, working to help solve complex problems affecting our fire service. Chief O'Brien serves on the IFC Board of Directors, longtime board member for the Fire and Life Safety section, and Chief O'Brien was a recipient of the 2021 Excellence in Fire and Life Safety Award from the International Code Council, strong advocate for the fire service in the areas of the community risk reduction. So let's welcome Chief today. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chief. Well, good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? All right, who drives a Tesla here? Anybody that's willing to admit it in Montana? Okay, so what's the general feeling on batteries in Montana? They suck? Okay, what else? Is that the strong opinion? So out of all the classes, why did we choose to sit in this one? Is it my good looks or what? Because they're coming. Okay, they're coming like a freight train, okay? And so I'm going to try my best in 1 hour to give you as much resources as we can as it relates to a very complex issue that is coming at a freight train. For those of you who use QR codes, if you scan that, I believe it's going to take you. I have a PowerPoint resources in there for you. I have a Montana Fire Chief's PowerPoint that you can grab as well, and you'll see me give some information. But hold on, I'll go back. I saw a couple phones. There you go. In there's that PowerPoint. You'll be able to. It takes you to a Google Drive. It's open to everybody. You should be able to grab it. Internet's a hair slow. My hope by the end of the day is that we equip you a little bit. If you actually Google or use your favorite search engine, charging stations in Montana, you find them all across the freeways and byways and all across, right? If we think back to batteries, Tesla said, hey, look, we're going to create this charging network so we can get our cars to market, and we're going to get this charging network so you can go from coast to coast, north to south, along any major freeway and be able to make sure you have a properly fueled vehicle in this battery arena. Over the years, obviously, now we have this huge climate agenda, whether you agree with it politically or not. When you put $1 trillion behind changing our automotive, you see rapid growth. And what I mean by that is it is a Silicon Valley, hit the battery market, hit the charging market, all at providing or electrifying our homes, our vehicles. And what this really does, when you put $1 trillion behind something, it will create drastic changes, right? So the big three, Ford, GM, Stellantis, or what was Chrysler, are behind in market share. And then we further complicate it to say what? If you want the money from the federal government to give to you, the consumer, your batteries and most of your car better be made where? In the United States, okay? So you'll get a chance to grab my intel. By all means, please reach out to me at any point in time. So within this program, I want to give you a little bit of tips and tricks. I've had the opportunity to lead a lot of the IFCs, initiatives in lithium ion. It started in the code environment. It's now gone into vehicles. I've talked to a lot of responders, fire chiefs who've been to, as well as ourselves. My department has had semis on fire to vehicles and how we're coping with this very complex change. So I'm going to give you a little snapshot about what's coming. This is Michigan, and Michigan is now looking at in excess of $10 billion in battery plants open and operating by the end of 24. I want you to think about how much money $10 billion is, right? We're building a semiconductor facility within the state of Michigan for about $300 million, which is probably one of the hardest things to do. Yesterday alone, there were 2 new plants announced within Michigan just to create batteries. So as we create cells, we need to get them in a format that works for our vehicles. And removing transportation issues is a big thing. So before this current influx, we really had 2, maybe 3 battery production facilities. The most and probably most robust one was the Gigafactory in Reno, Nevada. It's in the middle of a desert. How many of you know about the Gigafactory? It was the world's largest, 5 million square feet. battery and cell production, half by Panasonic. So Panasonic makes the cells. They give them to Tesla. Tesla buys them, and they put them into a usable format not only for their vehicles, but for their energy storage, fixed building energy, right? And so they really were the staple. Well, now we have, look at this, time and time again. Ford confirms Romulus, Michigan is location of Ford Ion Park. Millions worth of incentives approved for $1.7 billion. Expansion. Holland already has a $1.9 billion facility. TUVSUD invests $44 million. This is a battery testing facility in Michigan, and one that's taking a lot of stress in Michigan. This is a Chinese manufacturer for a $2.4 billion EV park who gets a $150 million tax break. As a fire service, we love when tax breaks are offered, right? And so it continues, and we see batteries all around us. And it's changing how most of our lives are going to go. GM says you're not going to be able to buy a gas-powered vehicle from us much past 2035. I think they're lying to you. I think it's 2030. That's my uneducated fire chief opinion. And I'm just telling you what we're seeing in the Metro Detroit region, which is the Motor City. It is a all-in, foot on the gas, change our environment in what you're going to be able to purchase and buy. So in order to have cars and vehicles, right, we have this raw materials, right? There's 5 major types right now of batteries that are being placed in vehicles in the built environment, all of lithium ion. There's a great race for the next chemistry, the next battery. I'm sure you're hearing about how we're having a hard time getting some of the raw materials that go on the anode and cathode. Okay? So to make batteries, we have to make an anode and cathode. And they come in different formats, which for us as the fire service right now isn't our priority. But we take this anode and cathode, we stick it in some kind of a container, and we put an electrolyte on it. For those of you who are used to big batteries to power buildings and other vehicles, this is different. The amount of electrolyte is very, very small compared to what we saw in traditional chemistries. Okay? So we make these batteries, and across the United States, we're now testing those batteries before they go into a vehicle, or we're testing other chemistries to see what can happen and how we can get. Yesterday in Van Buren, Michigan, which is about 20 minutes outside of Detroit, Next Energy One announced a 650,000 square foot facility. They think they've got the 600-mile battery, right? Most of our batteries in our vehicles are lasting us in that 250 to 3-something range. Depends how much air and road conditions and all that other things you're using. But you can change the consumer market if I can get to a 600-mile total battery package. We remove that fear of not being charged, right? That is a consumer problem, that we have this fear of not being charged. So right now when I say Silicon Valley meet the automotive, there is this rush for different chemistries within our global market. So we take these things, we could put them in energy storage system, the fixed building environment, utility grid support, your homes, all the way into an EV vehicle or a hybrid vehicle or any of those. And even our mobility devices. I got a couple pictures that we're going to go through in a minute. We use these batteries and we hit end of life, so what's next? We now have recycling issues. We have consumers taking lithium-ion battery packs from mobility devices, putting them in their trash. Their trash goes into a trash vehicle. That trash vehicle takes it to a transfer site before it goes to a dump. And in that transfer site, it's run over by the heavy equipment, causing the batteries to go into thermal runaway, causing what? A fire in that recycling or that trash transfer facility. There is a huge number of fires happening because we're not properly disposing of cells that go bad. So we now have this collect, and guess what the fire service is seeing? We're seeing big time issues in the built environment where how we store batteries awaiting recycle. Anybody here a contractor? that's willing to admit it. Cool. You ever break a DeWalt battery? Drop it off a roof? Doesn't charge anymore, so you're like, I'm going to use my warranty. You take that to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever your favorite big box retailer is. You say, hey, this is under warranty. I need a new one. They take it. They give you a new one. You ever wonder what happens to that bad battery and where it goes? Anybody respond to that fire yet? Okay? So we start to get this, right? So this upper right, that's Tesla. That's their battery charging. And there is an increased market of how do I make that charging grid more robust and faster. So I'm going to start putting batteries in part of the charging equipment so when you're coming to charge, I can give you that power faster. Getting charges down to sub 20 minutes is a major goal. But to move that much energy to give you 80% capacity is a hard electronic thing. The bottom right, that's your favorite Home Depot in South Carolina. Not quite Montana, but South Carolina. Not one gas-powered riding device in the whole store. I was dumbfounded when I started walking around. Right? Go to your average big box right now and try to buy a gas chainsaw or weed whip. Just look and see if you can find one. You will be pressed unless you know where you're going to go get one. In the left, these gray boxes on racks are energy storage panels, Tesla Powerwalls, that are about to be mounted in somebody's home. Huge market all across the United States. People like their power. They hate power outages. They see opportunity. It may be associated with photovoltaic or solar on the roof, and it may not. These are all waiting to get in. A fire happened in a construction trailer parked inside. My fire crews reported this, chief, was a weird fire. The density of the smoke, the velocity, it was weird how much water. And these are a low state of charge. So when they're stored, they're under 30% state of charge. So we have this very robust incident. It was just a vehicle fire that it caught some rack storage on fire, but created very intense situations. This is really what we're starting to see, is that our battery fires are falling into probably 5 major categories. Our major cities are seeing it, but I guarantee it, your community is seeing it as well. This is mobility-based devices catching on fire. E-bikes, scooters, could be a phone, could be a hoverboard, you name it. This could be here. New York City has had multiple fatalities. Vancouver's reporting, and same with Toronto. We are also seeing fires happen as the scooter rental programs go away. You know how you go to a city and you can rent a scooter? Does anybody treat those with care and caution? Okay? We can put batteries into thermal runaway in a vehicle, in a car, from trauma, bad cells, submersion in water. Okay? We can create an event. So when we come down to the second, right? Lots of videos, buses, vehicles, all catching on fire because of some situation. I don't know why. It could have been a large impact, could have been a crash. But this is, right, that electrical hybrid vehicle. Recycling, we talked about. Energy storage systems, this is the built environment from your home all the way to utility grid support. Does anybody have utility grid support? This is where you have 20, 30, 50 what look like semis next to a grid where we can store energy and then push it back in demand. Does anybody have a utility grid install? Okay? Coming to a town near you. Because one of the questions I think everybody says is, how is the grid going to support every home having a vehicle on charge at night? Right? So making the grid more robust with stored energy is a big thing. But from the fire service, there are documented cases where we're responding to these events. Picture a semi-trailer filled with batteries, and how are you going to put that out? But remember one thing, every time we put batteries in a box, if we don't do it right, it's bad. And finally, we've got this storage and manufacture. This picture is a recycling center of purely batteries. A 55-gallon drum held with mixed chemistry AA batteries that hadn't moved in excess of 3 months, caught on fire. So you have a battery recycling program within your community where somebody takes batteries and they put them in a bucket, right? They got to go to a place before they go and get recycled. Now, not all batteries are bad. We use them all the time. You probably have something on you with a lithium-ion battery called an iPhone, right? You may or may not have a laptop computer with you or an iPad. We use batteries within the fire service, and we probably keep ours at 100% state of charge all the time. Some of my vehicles are charging in excess of 12 batteries at any given time, right? Think about how much stuff is being charged on your apparatus, specifically if you're if you're a battery-based extrication equipment, right? Our Sawzalls, heck, we're even buying utility chainsaws to see if we can make this work. I still like gas, and I still can't believe something that sounds like a dustbuster can do that, okay? So if you look at this, this is from February 25th, 2021, and for those of you who don't know, that's a copy of a newspaper. They used to print them back in the day. But, right, they have to solve it. Inferno on Michigan road test. It could happen again. And, right, this is talking about, hey, these vehicles can be catching on fire, and what are we supposed to be doing with this? So really, one of the things that the IFC said is we don't want to make new training programs. We don't want to sit here and do this. How do we get resources to you all so you can be successful, and how do we start to prep the fire chief to be active in their community to start asking the right questions? So in that handout, if you scanned it, we gave this, and that's really what we're going to talk about. Battery and battery packs, typically in the EV market, are in a sandwich underneath your seats. The makeup differs depending on the manufacturer. Some use cells, some use packs, but really their intent is they put batteries in a very sealed container that's intended to design not to rupture and crashes and withstand. This on the left is a Ford F-150 Lightning battery package. Up in the upper right, that's a Tesla without all of the equipment put into it. So Tesla uses what look like big D batteries, and then they connect it and fill it with some goo. All of these have extremely tight packaged, there is very little room for water or anything to get into these battery packs that our manufacturers are doing. Now, a quick survey, when you're doing vehicle extrication, what color cable should you never cut? What is it? Orange. Right? Orange is one of the biggest, right, things that we came to. Are there some battery vehicles that don't have orange cables that are high voltage? Ah, yes. Right? That standard wasn't in place for about 10 years. How long's the Prius been out? Long time, right? So know that this battery pack is underneath that vehicle. So really from a fire service community, we have to start to have some big discussions within our communities about how we're going to handle these incidents. One of the biggest factors, whether you decide to try to extinguish or whether you let it burn, is the length of the incident. What's the fastest car fire you've ever been on? You ever get it done in under 20 minutes? How many of you will egg on another department or another station because they didn't quite get the fire out with the vehicle tank water they came with? Anybody ever do that? When twos can't get the fire put out with their 500 gallons and you got to come give them your 500, is there always a little joke going on? Okay, so most of our vehicle fires right now, today, we can put out with 500 gallons and in under 30 minutes. We're probably waiting more for the record than we are in the time to extinguish that incident. Both in the built environment as well as our vehicles, these are 2-hour incidents. Okay? So you as a company will be out of service, tied up for 2 hours. That includes wherever this vehicle may land. So this is part of what we have to do as a pre-discussion. How many fire chiefs do we have? Okay? How many company officers? And how many of you are not going to admit to anything else? Any firefighters? Sweet. Okay. So when we look at this, this is where we've got to start and say, okay, within my station, my department, my community, right? We need to have some global perspective. So chiefs, grabbing your command staff and your operational staff and saying, okay, let's start to shape our policy. Let's start to shape resources to get to our firefighters for better understanding in any of our incidents. And what I mean by this is play some simple games. Do you know how to put this vehicle in park? What happens if you get dispatched to a customer stuck in a car because it's dead and the door won't open anymore? A lot of the technology in our new EVs, people will absolutely love. Take the EV out of it. These are fantastic automobiles with heads-up displays, the biggest displays you've ever seen, and some of the coolest stuff in it. But there are some weird things. Within an incident response guide, it will actually tell you how you can open a door without the universal key when there's a complete power failure and the human is stuck inside. Right? There are certain things we're going to have to learn. The new Trailblazer that comes out, I think, at the end of this year, drives like a golf cart. If the key is in your pocket or your phone is in your car, you put your foot on the brake, you put your foot on the gas, and it goes forward. So think of that medical. Anybody ever get dispatched to a medical at 2 o'clock in the morning where somebody's passed out at a stoplight and you very gingerly try to get to it to put it in park before you scare the crap out of them and they run somebody over? Right? So think about this just in simple medical terms, just a simple fender bender that we're responding to. There are certain nuances within the vehicle. So partner within your communities. When you see the Mach-E, the Ford Mustang electric version, or the Ford F-150 Lightning at your local Ford dealer, take your crew down there and go look at it. Pull up the emergency response guide. Build that relationship. Because really, that's part of what we have to start as fire chiefs and as leadership is saying, hey, look, there's different technology with or without the battery chemistry that we have to do something to get used to and be part of. So part of this discussion is when should we put water on this incident and when should we let it burn? Should we buy a tarp or the car covers? Should we buy the Rosenbauer piece of equipment? Before you ever really get to that, there's really one thing. Should I let this burn or not? Hardest decision most of you will have to make. Why? We don't let things burn. Okay? You're going to get pulled up on a car fire, and you have to determine, is the battery pack involved? So we talked briefly, where's typically the battery pack? It's underneath the car. So I want you to picture in your head pulling up on an attic fire. Smoke's pouring out of the house everywhere, but flames have not burnt through yet. Okay, picture that in your head. How do you put that fire out? How do we put that fire out? Well, we got to get to it, right? So you're going to send a crew. They're going to go inside with a bunch of hooks. They're going to pull like hell. And then what are they going to do? They're going to pull water on it, right? And then we're going to weigh in all the various factors. Well, what do we do when we pull up on a car that you can't breach the battery package? Because you can't touch the high voltage. That's a bad thing. And so what are we going to do to get to that battery pack? We're going to wait for it to burn to us if it's not a compartment fire. So you will still have a compartment fire on an electric vehicle that does not involve the battery pack. Put it out like you normally would. Agreed? When it's in the battery pack and there's no exposures, no humans trapped, you have a huge consideration in, do I let it burn or not burn? When all else fails, put water on the fire. Now you're going to need copious amounts of water. So in this pre-incident planning, we need to have discussions. Who has a 500-gallon tank on their fire engine? Okay? Wow. Okay. Those of you who have 500-gallon tanks, do you have tanker or tender support? Okay. So for those of you in metros that only have 500-gallon tanks because everywhere you go has a little red fire plug, but on your freeways, do you have little red fire plugs? So I need you to think of this. How do I do water delivery of 8 to 10,000 gallons based on 500-gallon tanks for the next 2 hours? This is a cooling situation. This is one hand line for the next 2 hours. So think about it. Those of you in the rural areas, you're used to moving water, so you're sitting here already turning, right? All right, Chief, I can run in 3 miles, fill the tanker, and come back. This isn't setting up tanks. right? This is probably nursing through a 2.5 or a 5-inch or however you choose. But you have a long-term duration where I now need to get multiple vehicles down there to get to this. Likewise, we need to have that plan. If the vehicle is an electric vehicle inside of a garage, it presents as a garage fire, are we going to put water on the fire? We're going to put water on the fire. The one thing we're probably going to have to do earlier is get a tow truck vehicle there to get it pulled out. Okay? Have we towed vehicles out of garage fires before? Yeah. You ever fought a garage fire where the gas tank broke? Does it change the dynamics? Okay, so can you start to see these pre-discussions? Now, if I say, hey, look, we're going to get to some points where we let these vehicles burn. Side of the freeway, no exposures, no humans trapped. I'm going to let this burn. Because here's the thing, when you're cooling this, when you're putting water on these battery packs that are in thermal runaway, you're just delaying the inevitable. It's going to catch on fire. So if the tow yard is in your neighbor's jurisdiction, go ahead. Fight like mad for the next hour putting water on it. Go ahead. It's just going to catch back on fire somewhere down the road, up to 3, 4, 5 weeks later. And if the tow yard's in your neighbor's jurisdiction, why would you care? Right? So we've seen the pictures, right, in Europe of taking the vehicle, putting it in a tank. I don't know if that's an option, right? But really, we have this decision on burn, let it burn. So if I'm going to let it burn, I probably need to have some conversations with some partners. Who would those partners be? Law? You may want to have EPA. They're not, yeah, there's issues either way, right? Studies say that the water runoff is not an issue. But I'm not 100% sold there. Someday somebody else is going to keep testing that, right? And we're on the early crux. But we do have this smoke. We do have that concern. But really, law, we need to get with our police partners, our sheriff, our state police, our local police, and say, hey, look, when this happens and it's no exposures, no humans trapped, we're probably going to let it go. And we're going to try to move traffic along. We're going to keep an engine there to keep the grass or something else from catching on fire, but we're going to let it go. That changes the dynamics. It's still going to be an hour-and-a-half incident. Likewise, probably community leaders, we need to have that discussion. Agreed? We need to let our bosses know, and we probably need some coined press release. Guess what? Every fire chief that's let it go, they've gotten about this much. When the fire chief comes back to the media and says, it's an electric vehicle, very difficult to extinguish. Our water will not extinguish it. Our foam will not extinguish it. What do you want us? We made a choice to not tie up 5 companies on this incident. We left one engine company in a ready state. We monitored it, and it put itself out. Part of this, too, is what are the vehicle extrication resources we need? How many of you cover freeway? Okay, right? So my staff, we cover half of the GM Proving Grounds. We've been to a lot of training. We do a lot of extrication, 27 miles of freeway. I think our staff knows how to cut some people out of vehicles. And they've seen some horrific things, such as the engine over there and the rest of the car over there. Right? How is that going to present in this electrification? They're very curious and asking engineers, what are we going to see? And you're probably going to see what happened in an Ohio town in which a vehicle, a battery vehicle going at about 100 miles an hour, hit a rock, scraped open the bottom, flipped over and on its top. As the fire crews approached, it looked like fireworks coming out of the vehicle. Cylindrical cells pushing and shooting. So what did they do? Humans still in the car. What do? Well, you got to stabilize, and I got to put water on it and start my extrication all at the same time. Anybody ever been dispatched to a vehicle on fire that a human is trapped and you have simultaneous things? Again, it's going to present, yes, it's a different challenge, but in many cases we've been on it. So this thing here about burn, let it burn. One of the items, and I purposely put this because do we have exposures here? We also have what going on here? What do you see plugged in? Charging, right? In Connecticut, 2 buses lost under a charging. These were school buses under a charging situation. So if you have a CAD system or if you have the ability to mark pre-incident planning, identifying your electrical shutoff for your commercial charging and disconnects is big. Because your training already is going to tell you what on this? Bad. Okay. Do I have exposures? Put the exposure out. But you're going to be fighting this thing back and forth until you can get the exposure away. But more importantly, we've got to get the energy in that distribution system shut off. So is there, when you see a charging system come into your town, pre-incident plan that with your companies. Where is the disconnect? How do we get the power shut off in that charging? Now that's in a commercial setting. This will be happening in the residential setting, right? From a community risk reduction standpoint, what are we doing as the fire service to educate our homeowners to make sure they're getting permits and using qualified electricians when they're putting in charging systems, right? Charging happens in 3 basic levels. All of your vehicles, when you buy them, will come with a level 1. Plugs into a standard wall outlet, and this is when you go to your parents' house and want to charge your vehicle overnight. You can charge about 15 miles per hour plugged into a general wall. If you're a fire chief, at some point you're going to have to answer this question. Can your employees charge their electric vehicle at your fire station on a 24? Think about it for a minute. Can the public, I've already had it where somebody pulled up to one of our stations and our crews are like, Chief, what are we supposed to do? And they plugged in because they couldn't find a charger anywhere else and they needed some juice. Good question to ask, right? Level 2 is the same energy that we would do with a stove or a dryer, that bigger capacity, electrician installed. You're going to get about 20 to 25 miles of charge per hour, right? A little bit more robust. And then like the Tesla chargers, that's the ones where we're getting 80% charge in under 30 minutes. That's a level 3. A little bit different in the chargers. So what happens when we do have these vehicles with exposures in the garage, in the home setting? Get it towed away. Figure it out, because this fire is different. It has all the products it needs to sustain fire, then you can't stop it. Remember the fire triangle? What are the 3 things of the fire triangle? What do you got? Oxygen, what else? Heat and fuel. These things have it all, okay? So you put water on it, it's just going to come back. But think of that first picture we had. When one cell goes into thermal runaway, it creates stress on the next cell, the next package. And so you get this effect where one goes and it keeps going. Now, what is really bad about batteries, when they go into thermal runaway, with or without fire, they're producing a very nasty smoke, a very nasty off gas, in which one of the biggest things is hydrogen. Okay? So I want you to think about hydrogen off-gassing when we have cells. Is that flammable, combustible, or don't care? What is it? It's as flammable gas as it comes. If I put a bunch of hydrogen in a container, would that be okay, I don't care, or what? It's bad. It is bad. So in an energy storage system, in a vehicle that is off-gassing, in a garage, the biggest thing we need to do is what? Ventilate. So when we have this, we've got to make sure that we're getting this. So here is a Honda Kona EV in Montreal. What made this fire interesting was what? When fire crews pulled up, where was the garage door? Across the street. And this is one of 2 incidents, okay, where the garage door's across the street. So as we get battery vehicles, as more of our homes get energy storage, we're going to see more of this in our garage setting. UL is going to be releasing some training, and I'm going to kind of gloss over this for a little bit because I think by January you're going to be able to get your hands on some really good training for what is the off-gassing when we have off-gassing in a garage. But more importantly, if we have that vehicle and it's off-gassing in a garage and it's not on fire, well ventilate, crews in full PPE, including face piece and a hand line. When our crews have been to a couple EV fires, some inside, some outside. One of the things I would say is this. My crews are reporting they can't get the smell out of their turnout gear without multiple washes. Now, I don't know what that means yet as a fire chief, but it tells me that stuff's gnarly, okay? So really emphasize the use of a face piece, even though it presents as a very white gas, hydrogen. There's other things in it, and we've got to make sure that we're taking care of it.
What is the smell?
I have no clue what it's, well, oh, what is the smell? It's in their turnout gear.
I mean, what does it smell like?
It smelled like your normal car fire, to be quite honest. But it just didn't go away in their turnout gear. Like one wash and you're good usually. They were saying multiple washes for our first-in crew. Yeah. Somebody remind me what time I'm supposed to be done? 3? 3:15. Thank you. I'm going to talk really fast. You guys ever seen that guy? All right. So post-incident, we have this thing, right? So FBI reaches out and says, hey, Mike, can you come talk to us about electrical vehicles? Well, if the FBI asks, I'm going to go see them, right? They said, we store vehicles inside all the time, post-crash, post-being stolen, whatever. What do you think we should do with EVs? Not store them inside if they're crashed. And he goes, really? He goes, well, what are we going to do for investigations? So, talk and have a conversation with your law. I did not realize how often after horrific events a vehicle gets stored inside while it's awaiting investigation. We do not want these vehicles that are in significant crashes to be stored inside. We want to make sure we're having a conversation with our tow yards. So if you think about an accident scene right now where you have a vehicle or multi-vehicles, one tow truck can usually pick up 2 cars, right? Puts one on the flatbed, it puts one on the back, and off they go. All of our EVs have to be either on dollies or flatbed because of their drivetrain situation. So in our simple accidents, there is a change, right? So knowing how the drivetrain works on our EVs is going to lead us to a couple things as we start to look at our incident response. Not only do we have to talk to our tow companies about how they're going to tow, but when they've been involved in fire or an accident or thermal runaway, we do not want them storing these right next to the rest of the yard. Most of the manufacturers are saying 50 feet, right? And likewise, how many of you do a really good job right now of blocking tires both on an accident or on a vehicle fire today? It now needs to become mandatory. And I'm going to give you a couple things. There are so many EVs on the road out by us now, and we're not even California, but there are so many EVs on the road, I'm struggling to be able to tell it's an EV vehicle. What are some indicators that you know it's an EV? Huh? No grill, it's covered. It's solid, okay? No tailpipes, no exhaust. Look for a charge port, right? So one of the things that I'm telling our crews, anybody use that thing called Blue Card up here? Okay, so if your company officer on Blue Card does not do a 360 on the first arriving crew, does it screw the rest of the operations up for a hot second? Okay, it does for us, all right? So we're taking that same methodology that's very comfortable to our company officers, but when they arrive now, right, we've always said do inner outer circles, both in fires as well as vehicle extrication or vehicle accidents, to get your lay of the land. In this case, we're really emphasizing do that again, and your engineer, your operators need to start to get into chalking the tires real quick. Within all of our electric vehicles, all of them have an emergency response guide. So you need to get kind of funky with trying to find these, but I'm going to give you these guys real quick. And I'm going to show you something on the screen. So we've been playing a game. When you see an EV, can you find the response guide? So Tesla's done a wonderful job out of all of the manufacturers of getting you all information that you need. They have a lot of great videos on their vehicle operations, charging operations. But if you look here, notice that you can find all of their products from MSDS sheets on the bottom, their supercharger. So think of this. What happens when a vehicle runs over a gas pump? You all know what to do? Stop the gas, shut it off, right? What happens when a vehicle runs over a charging station? Do you know what to do yet? Shut off the power, right? So we're learning, right? But here's some great response guides. And one of the things that you'll find with Tesla, they are pretty responsive. So anybody have a favorite Tesla? Let's just go a Model 3. So you hit this emergency response guide. All the manufacturers in the EV market have agreed to make their response guides the same. How your cruise, and I'm guessing here you guys don't always have great cell phone coverage, do you? So this may need to go in 3-ring binder situation, but you have a pre-incident plan for your vehicle electrification and your auto fires in much of the cases. So this layout is how all of the manufacturers have agreed. 0 is basically stating what this is: identification, immobilization, stabilization, lifting. Right? How do I lift this car? How do I move this car? Disabled, direct hazards, access to occupants, stored energy, liquids, gases, solids in case of fire, in case of submersion. 8, towing and transportation. All right, so if the person was stuck in the car, where would we go? Like, not extrication, but they can't open the door and we somehow got a service call. 4, right? So let's just go to fire because, I should probably show you this. So this is Tesla telling you, hey, look, see that orange stuff? Don't cut that stuff when you're in vehicle extrication. Now, you want to go remove a roof. I think most of us in vehicle extrication land have been good of peeling, peeking before we cut. Why? Airbags. But look at how close that high voltage gets down in the bottom, and where can I cut if I'm going to take this whole roof on this vehicle? You see where I'm talking about? You've got the green for the cylinder for the airbag, and you've got some high voltage there that's going to be difficult. But you can see where Tesla is saying, hey, look, you see where our high voltage components are, so that's the orange to show you where the battery packs. But they go through the basics, what you're going to see. Hey, here's how you chuck front and back. Here's our battery pack. And look it, do not use the high voltage to lift or stabilize the vehicle. Now, I want you to troubleshoot this. Where do you put your step chocks to stabilize the vehicle in auto extrication? You see what I'm talking about? Now, the yellow area is okay. It's the middle area that we've got to be careful on. So lots of here Tesla talks about their disconnect. You're going to double cut the disconnects probably in that vehicle extrication, but it only takes care of the low voltage. This does not discharge the energy. We cannot, at this point in time, discharge the energy out of a battery pack. The only way is a salt water bath that we're not going to be doing. There's a disconnect on the back, on the cut cables, and they show you through that. Then here's their airbags, access to the occupants and how you use the handles. I know it seems really weird, but it's different. So I want to get the fire out of the interest of time. And you can look at all of these. And I think there's some stuff on electrolyte. Remember, it's very low. That's where the battery would kind of look like. All right, so in case of fire, do not submerge vehicle to extinguish, cool the battery fire. Use large amounts of water. Possible battery reignition, and monitor HV battery temperature for at least 24 hours. Okay? Use water to fight a high voltage battery fire. If the battery catches on fire, exposed to heat, generating gases, will use large amounts of water, 3,000 to 8,000 gallons. If water is not immediately available, use CO2, dry chem, or other. I would only do that if humans are trapped. Okay? Note, Tesla does not recommend the use of foam. Why? You're not going to penetrate and let the vapors go. We don't want to create a blanket on it. Okay? Now, Tesla and all the manufacturers are starting to put this paragraph here. Apply water directly to the battery. If safety permits, lift or tilt the vehicle for more direct access. Why would we do that? If it's burnt through on the bottom. But it's a if you look at all the videos that are out there of crews fighting these things, these are fires you don't want to be right next to. They're violent, they're aggressive, they're loud. And quite honestly, I don't want my very expensive Jaws going up to pick up a car so I can get water underneath something I should probably just let burn. Extinguish all fires that don't involve the battery. And, you know, I mean, basically, hey, they're talking about it. Similar to conventional other electric hybrid vehicles, a burning battery releases superheated gases and toxic vapors. May include volatile organic compounds, hydrogen gas, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, etc. Now, look at submersion. Anybody ever go on a car in water with a human trapped? Don't you want to know if you're going to get zapped or not? Anybody? Bueller? All right. So make sure you read this before you go in after it. Treat a submerged Model 3 like you would anything else. The Model 3 does not present a greater risk of shock because it's in water. However, handle any submerged vehicle while wearing the appropriate PPE for water rescue. Remove the vehicle from water and continue with normal high voltage disabling. What did the hurricane just teach us? 2 fire departments have responded to electrical vehicle fires after the water subsided. Okay? This is a compromised battery pack. So handling it with care and creating a post-incident is very key. You may not be on a fire right now, but somewhere down the road you could get ignition. Right? The manufacturers don't want water going into these, but they have reliefs, and there are ways. Caution. If you read the Ford F-150 battery submersion, it says to not touch the vehicle until you've heard the gurgling of the battery stop. I'm putting to this you as caution. I have not read every manufacturer's submersion and fire and vehicle extrication. I don't know, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of what do they know that we don't know. Because some law, EMS, or fire crew is going to touch that vehicle. Nobody's going to sit back and watch somebody drown. But right now, there is no way for us to test if the chassis or the vehicle, but all GM, Chrysler, and Tesla are all saying you can touch our vehicle if it's submerged. Okay? It's not an electrical shock hazard. So you can see here they've even got stuff for towing and transportation, and they've got a whole bunch of other stuff. So every manufacturer has something, and what I would encourage you to do is make sure you know how to get it within your environment. Internet access, on your phone, whatever, building a database that your crews can get to quickly. And my guess is it's not your first in crew. But teach your law partners to maybe tell you ahead of time that this is an electric vehicle in this brand. So picture that 360, right? What are some key components we want in a 360 on a building structure fire? Basement, no basement, trapped, changing our IAP. Well, if I do an inner outer circle and I teach my company officers the same rhythm, inner and outer circle on all of our vehicle accidents here and forward. We are not going to do it without an outer circle first, checking for overall safety, right? What do? We do outer laps on our structure fires looking for downed wires, pools, occupants trapped, and then we do an inner, right? So teach your crew to do that real quick and come back with that secondary radio. Teach your law to radio to you, hey, this is a Tesla Model Y, heavy impingement. Now what can my crews be doing real quick? Probably specifically my second and third in crews. Get to the response guides, pull it up, and refresh. And I equate this to, anybody a paramedic here? Yeah. So you go on a infant CPR. Anybody really good on your med doses off the top of your head? We have those strips you put out, okay? But what are we doing en route typically in the medic unit? Hey, epi dose is, remember, right? And we're kind of refreshing those high frequency or low frequency, high risk events. The same would go with this. So teach some of your partners to get you some of that information. Now, with energy storage, I'm going to switch gears real quick because we're going to run out of time, and then I want to be able to take questions. Just know that energy storage has killed some of our firefighters. And it looks, and this is the built environment, putting energy, people want their power. And I'm putting it in homes, and I'm putting it all over. And our public is really starting to ask for this. We have a response guide for you that is a very similar thing, but it changes a little bit in general. If you read LG to Tesla in any of their energy storage. They do not want you to put the energy storage unit that is involved in fire or thermal runaway out. You gotta let it go. Now, as a firefighter, how many times have you taken apart a furnace on a smoke call? Everybody done that? You take the covers off and go, burnt out motor. These are built-in packages that we don't want you in and we don't want you to open, because part of their safety is to contain everything into it and let the off-gassing go. Okay? Batteries in boxes is bad, and I have no clue if that's good grammar. I want you to remember that. I don't care if we take recycled batteries and we put them in a semi-trailer, or we take batteries and put them in an energy storage box. It is bad if we don't build in certain things: ventilation, cooling, and protection so it doesn't blow up on you. Energy storage systems go through very robust testing to get UL listed and to limit how much fire comes out of the boxes. But if you get a large utility grade install, call me and we will help walk you through that one. Okay? But it is successful when only one of the boxes catches on fire. We let that one burn and we protect exposures. Likewise, in a residential setting, the key is this: we gotta let that battery pack burn itself out. And it is not a 30-minute room and contents fire. This is now a half-day event. This is a full work cycle event. If it's the size or multiple units, it could push into 24 plus hours. Okay, so we're changing your fire environment. So allow it to burn itself out. You putting water on the enclosure from the size of a semi down to the size of a briefcase is not going to stop the thermal runaway. Wear your full PPE. If it's an energy storage system, both in a commercial setting or in a residential, and it's inside, ventilate the area. Does Montana have basements? This scares the living bejeebers out of me. We are putting these things in basements, and I'm not sure I can ventilate a regular fire, let alone one that's off-gassing hydrogen. Okay, right now, there really isn't any equipment listed for basements, but there are a lot of people misapplying the installs and allowing it to happen. Okay, so having any fire marshals? Our fire marshal, like if I'm chief, I say, hey, fire marshal, I want you to get with our code enforcement people, our electrical, mechanical, and I want us to walk through how and where ESS. And in a perfect world, I would love our building officials to flag ESS installs in our CAD system so it pops up for our responding crews as a general note, okay, for that address. Lithium-ion batteries that are in thermal runaway, off-gas and create hazardous stuff. Your TIC, your thermal imaging camera, will not always give you a true sense of what's going on. Where your crews have to have patience is when it's smoke coming out of an ESS. And you're going to sit there and go, great. In the commercial setting, get on the phone with the provider right away. In the residential setting, bring it, at some point you're going to get on the phone with them. It's defensive firefighting. If fire's not developed and only smoke is visible, take a defensive stance towards the system and be prepared to apply water. If fire develops, take a defensive stance towards the burning unit and apply water to neighboring battery enclosures, right? If you have a 4,000 square foot home, your energy storage system will either be in your garage or on the exterior. I'm guessing in Montana, because of temperatures, they're going to put it on the inside of the garage. There will be multiple units in that case. So, protect the exposures, get the power shut off, and let the thing run its course. In some of the large commercial systems, you're looking at 300 feet. And what I want you to think is the incident down south in which the firefighter was thrown through what? Chain link fence. Through a chain link fence when they opened a door. So if it is a walk-in unit, we do not go in the walk-in unit. Okay? So ventilation is the key. In this, you have a response guide. So I just happened to grab Tesla's. If you get a commercial install, put that in your pre-incident plan if you have one. And again, everything we just talked about, they have a section, firefighting measures responding to a venting Tesla energy product. Here's what they say. There's the defensive. But I will tell you, when we had that fire, we got on the horn with Tesla, and it's just their emergency response, and they were phenomenal assets to us. even though they're in California and we were here in Michigan, okay? So get on the phone. So when you get into that, right, this is part of what we have to equip our crews with. You have a venting, you have a vehicle and thermal runaway. We know right now what to do with a smoking car, do we not? The hard part our crews are going to struggle with, what do we do with a smoking battery pack? Smoke's coming out of the bottom. It is going to be a patience, wait and see game. There's nothing we can do, okay? One of the vendors has the Rosenbauer product sitting out there. Feel free to go look at it. I think in many regards, we need to see this tested more, but I'm going to tell you one caution, is all the manufacturers are scared of that because they don't want you to pierce the high voltage, okay? So just know that there is a product that they have, but you also need to think of the makeup of the battery pack. Yes, it's going to pierce the battery pack. Yes, it's going to put water on it, which is a good thing, but I want you to think of that pack. Was there a lot of free room for water to move around? No. So you've got to get it in the right spot, and you've got to be careful of the high voltage. So there's a lot that's going on, and one of the things that we have to work on is what happens when this whole thing is done, and how do we get this decommissioned. In the built environment, autos and vehicles, 1 to 2 hour incidents, okay? 1 to 2 hour incidents. Whether you want to put water on it or whether you want to let it go, 1 to 2 hours. In the commercial setting, most likely 12 hours in the residential, multiple days in the commercial. Outside the Phoenix area, had one that lasted 3 weeks, okay? So picture detailing for companies. Every day they let it go at night and they come back, they let it go, okay? So lots of things for us to work on. And really, this recycling and other related. So let's talk about mobility devices. You get dispatched to a home fire in the back. I don't want you to leave here and say, oh, shoot, man, every battery's going to catch on fire. That's not the case. We have really good success, and we're still struggling on how to figure this out, okay? We went from 2 battery manufacturers in the United States to dozens. And the same people that can't get your Whopper order right are now making batteries. So I just plant that as a seed, okay? But just know that they're putting a lot of things in line to get those batteries right, to give it the best, and make a really good product, okay? But we live in a world of what-ifs. You all go to horrific things, right? And the same goes with this. We go to a room and contents fire, and the mobility device didn't cause it, but it's been consumed in fire and went through thermal runaway. Scooter, bike, whatever, e-bike. Anybody own an e-bike? They go 40 miles an hour now. They're huge, huge battery packs. So what do you do as a community now? Okay, so most of us, anybody have high rises here or mid rises? Okay, so if you don't, what do you do with your mobility device that was just on fire? Throw it out the window, right? Problem solved. Now, your community risk reduction act needs to come on. What's really my role as the fire chief? How do we properly dispose of that? What is our role, right? There are some products such as Cell Block, which would allow you with a de-energized cell to put it into a storage and you could call for some recycling. But that's the next step beyond your response. It's now what do we do so we don't create another incident down the stream. Because if you leave that battery bike there and you don't give the homeowner, what are they going to do with it? They're throwing it away, it's going in a dumpster, right? In almost there's going to be more battery recycling in the next. BAFA, my fire department, we got dispatched to a recycling semi-fire. No placards, filled to the gills with batteries. All sorts of lithium-ion batteries, from automotive to mobility-based or consumer electronics. Crews open the door. Now, what have I told you about batteries in boxes? Bad. Batteries in boxes that are ESS, we've built in ventilation. We've built in protection measures because it's part of a listed system, much different, a vehicle, much different. But when I take those batteries awaiting recycle, it literally left the storage facility 5 miles and it caught on fire in our jurisdiction. It presented as a box on fire, a 53-foot semi on fire. Crews opened the door and they said this, Chief, it didn't explode, but it went boom. I think that's their manly way of saying we're good. But the vehicle went like this. Okay, the semi-box went like this. What's that tell you? We were lucky, first of all, right? So I want you to think about that as you go through. So that is one 55-gallon drum on the top rack of a storage configuration, caught on fire. It boiled water for 1 hour. Now, I don't employ many people who can operate a forklift. Anybody want to get up there with a forklift and move a filled 55-gallon drum filled with boiling stuff down to the ground to get it out so we could stop that? Look at that smoke, right? And so I think this is our bigger issue coming down the pipe for the fire service. This is a Best Buy. This is happening all over. We've been doing this for years. That's that semi. That's the product that was in there, okay? So nothing like getting a SkyTrack out to the scene so we can get this thing out. This closed a major freeway in Metro Detroit for like 7 hours, okay? Copious amounts of water, right? And you can see. They were going to this facility from Michigan to Redwood, California, or Redwood Material in Nevada. This is where almost all your battery recycling is going. This is 50 acres of stored batteries awaiting recycling. 50 acres, okay? And you can see the incident. This is what our crews are going to be responding to. So if you have this, prepare them. This is my contact info. I'm out of time because you got to go meet with the vendors. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions, any quick ones. Anybody want to hold the whole class up for the break? Please, you know, what I would encourage you, create action. Just have a conversation with your crews right off the bat. It may not be what you think of this big Herculean event, but it will be a car coming through your town that's involved into an accident, right? It could be the built environment. It could be so many things. Just start the conversation, and if you need a drill, go to your local Tesla, GM, Ford, and say, hey, next time you get a battery vehicle in, can we bring our companies over just to look at it? All right. Have a great night. Call me if you need anything. Call and text. Email.